Nissan 300ZX. Angular, confident, and unmistakably born from the 80s. The car doesn't shout for attention. It glides. It owns the darkness in a quiet, steady way, like it knows something the rest of the world hasn't figured out yet. And that's where the first question rises. How did a Japanese sports car end up shaping America's idea of performance at a time when the country itself was struggling to define it? The early 1980s were confusing years for American drivers. Emissions laws were tightening. Fuel economy became a national priority. Insurance companies punished anything with real power. The great muscle cars of the 1960s had been forced into softer, quieter versions of themselves. Fans of speed felt like they were watching an old era fade away. And then, something unexpected arrived. The Nissan 300ZX didn't roar into the scene. It didn't try to revive the past. It offered something new, a different interpretation of performance. Where Detroit relied on displacement, the 300ZX relied on engineering. Where old muscle stood on brute force, this car leaned on precision, aerodynamics, electronics, and a new generation of tuning philosophy. It's easy to forget now, but in the early 80s, Japanese automakers were still seen mainly as producers of economy cars. Affordable, efficient, practical, but not emotional, not exciting. That perception cracks the moment you watch a 300ZX sweep across an open highway. You realize this machine wasn't trying to fit a stereotype. It was rewriting one. It was saying, performance can be sharp, balanced, reliable, all at the same time. Before the car ever reached American dealerships, Nissan's own engineers were wrestling with a question that felt almost risky. Would Americans accept a high-tech V6 sports car in a market raised on V8 thunder? Not even the designers knew the answer. And that's what makes its arrival so interesting. The 300ZX wasn't guaranteed success. It wasn't a sure bet. It had to earn its place on magazines, racetracks, city streets, and late-night car meets. Bit by bit, it started convincing people, not by copying American performance, but by offering an entirely different path. Over time, the 300ZX didn't just find space in America. It helped redefine what that space could be. Young drivers saw it as futuristic. Tuners saw potential. Veterans of the muscle era recognized something they hadn't felt in years: excitement. This is the story of how that shift happened, how a car built in Japan, shaped by wind tunnels and early digital tech, helped America rebuild its own definition of speed. So let's step back for a moment into the era that made the 300ZX possible. The late 1970s didn't feel like progress for American drivers. It felt like a long exhale after a decade of speed, sound, and rebellion. Factories were slowing down, fuel prices kept climbing, and the national mood had shifted from excitement to patience. People weren't chasing horsepower anymore. They were trying to survive gas lines, rising insurance bills, and new emissions laws that made every V8 feel weaker than the one before it. The muscle era was ending. Not with a crash, more like a fade. Cars that once ruled highways now struggled to breathe under government regulations. Engines shrank, power dropped, weight increased. Detroit was trying to adapt, but the American performance identity was slipping away, inch by inch. At the same time, something different was happening across the Pacific. In Japan, efficiency wasn't just a goal, it was becoming a philosophy. Toyota, Honda, and Nissan were building reputations for reliability, precision, and engineering discipline. Their cars weren't flashy, but they didn't need to be. They worked. They lasted. And American buyers noticed. By the early 1980s, imports were no longer a rare sight. Datsun small cars filled college parking lots. Honda Civics became commuter staples. Toyota pickups were earning reputations for toughness. Japanese engineering wasn't exotic anymore. It was practical. But performance? That was still a wall waiting to be climbed. Japanese brands had proven they could build economical machines. The question was whether they could build emotional ones, machines that made people feel things, cars that reminded drivers why roads mattered. Nissan understood that challenge better than most. Throughout the 1970s, the original Z car, the 240Z, had been their bridge into American hearts. Light, balanced, beautiful. It arrived at the perfect time and gave drivers an affordable taste of European-style sports car behavior. But then came the 280Z and the 280ZX. Both sold well, but something had changed. The Z gained weight, it gained luxury, it gained comfort. What it lost was the raw, simple character that made the 240Z iconic. Critics said it was drifting away from its purpose. Enthusiasts felt the soul slipping. By 1982, Nissan knew the Z needed to be reborn. Not refreshed, reborn. The company was also dealing with something unusual, a brand identity shift. The Datsun name, so familiar in America, was being phased out in favor of Nissan. That transition created confusion. Dealerships had mixed signage. Brochures carried both names. Some owners didn't understand why their cars had different badges depending on where they were built. Nissan needed a clean, new face. And the next Z car was chosen to carry that new identity. Its success would determine whether the company could evolve in the American market, or whether its image would fall behind competitors who were quickly gaining ground. Behind closed doors, Nissan's engineering teams were studying global trends. Europe was refining handling. America was rediscovering fuel injection. Japan was perfecting small but powerful engines. The world was shifting, and the Z had to shift with it. This is where the stage begins to tilt. Because while America was trying to recover from a decade of restrictions, Japan was preparing a new idea. Performance built on intelligence, not brute force. The 300ZX would become that idea, but only if it could survive the expectations placed upon it. By the end of 1983, the pressure was intense. Nissan needed a symbol. Enthusiasts needed hope. The American market needed a reminder that performance wasn't dead, it was evolving. The world was ready for a new chapter, and the Z was about to write it. The development of the 300ZX begins years before the public ever hears its name. Inside Nissan, the Z car is more than a product line. It's a responsibility. The 240Z created an entire identity for the company, and the weight of that success never disappears. Every engineer who touches the next Z car knows the expectations that come with it. Kazumasa Takagi steps into that pressure willingly. As the chief engineer assigned to the new Z project, he carries both the legacy and the tension of the moment. He understands the complaints about the 280ZX. He knows the Z has drifted too far into luxury. And he sees a global market demanding a sports car that fits the new decade. One shaped by fuel injection, electronics, and aerodynamics. Takagi's first mission is simple: bring the Z back to its roots without ignoring the future. That balance is harder than it sounds. The world is changing fast. Regulations are rising, safety rules are tightening, and competition isn't just coming from Europe anymore. It's coming from Japan and the United States at the same time. In early design meetings, the shape of the car becomes the first major battle. The rounded curves of the 1970s don't match the efficiency goals of the 1980s. Aerodynamics demand sharper lines, lower profiles, and cleaner surfaces. Takagi and his team begin sketching a wedge-inspired silhouette. Not aggressive, just purposeful. The wind tunnel becomes their second home. Tests run hour after hour. Adjustments are made millimeter by millimeter. They lower the hood. They tighten the front fascia. they sharpen the roofline. The team isn't trying to make the car look futuristic. They're trying to make it cut through the air with less resistance than any Z before it. And then comes the discussion that splits opinion inside the building: the engine. For decades, the Z has relied on the inline-six. Smooth, reliable, characteristic. But new packaging requirements, emissions demands, and modern performance standards pushed Nissan towards something different: a V6. The VG series is in development, an all-new architecture designed for the next generation of vehicles. Many engineers resist the idea. Some see the inline-six as part of the Z's identity. Others worry the new V6 will feel too different, too modern, too quiet, too unfamiliar for traditional enthusiasts. Takagi listens to every argument. He understands the emotion behind the engine debate, but he also knows the Z cannot survive the 1980s without evolution. The V6 is compact, efficient, and ready for turbocharging. It offers better weight distribution and stronger potential for future tuning. The decision is made. The next Z will carry the VG series. The interior becomes the next frontier. Nissan's designers begin experimenting with digital instrumentation, voice warning systems, and new electronic features that reflect the high-tech promise of the era. The 300ZX is not meant to be a nostalgic sports car. It's meant to represent the future. But modernizing the interior means walking another tightrope. Too much tech and the loyalists revolt. Too little and the Z falls behind competitors who are embracing digital dashboards and computer-assisted systems. During early mock-up reviews, Takagi studies driver seating angles, visibility lines, and dashboard height. He insists that even with new electronics, the cabin must feel simple and driver-focused. Technology should support the experience, not overwhelm it. While designers refine the interior, Nissan's production teams work on manufacturing changes. Automation at the Tochigi plant increases. Panels are stamped with higher precision. Quality checks are stricter. The company wants the new Z to feel tight, quiet, and solid from the moment a door closes. The turbo engine presents its own challenges. Early prototypes suffer from heat issues. Lag is noticeable. Engineers debate intercooler placement and exhaust routing. They run tests in humid weather, cold mornings, and long highway pulls. Every failure becomes a lesson. Every solution becomes a step toward reliability. By the mid-1980s, turbocharging is becoming a signature feature in sports cars around the world. Nissan wants the 300ZX Turbo to stand among the best: powerful, responsive, and dependable. Multiple revisions lead to better boost control, cooler intake temps, and a smoother power curve. But technical progress isn't the only story happening behind the scenes. There's anxiety inside the company. The name change from Datsun to Nissan is underway, and the 300ZX is expected to carry that transition. The marketing team wants a clean identity. The engineering team fears backlash. Dealerships prepare for customers who may not recognize the badge. The Z doesn't just have to perform, it has to reassure. To understand what's at stake, Takagi and several members of the team travel to the United States for market studies. They visit California car meets, speak with Z car clubs, and walk through parking lots studying what people drive. What they learn surprises them. Americans aren't rejecting technology. They just want performance that feels honest and consistent. This insight strengthens their resolve. The 300ZX must be modern. It must be efficient. It must be aerodynamic and electronically advanced. But it must also feel like a driver's car. Predictable, balanced, responsive. Not a luxury cruiser, not an experiment. A real sports machine for a new decade. Late-stage prototypes finally begin coming together. Panels fit cleaner. Interior pieces align. The turbo engine responds faster. Wind tunnel numbers improve. Engineers start smiling during test drives, a quiet sign that the work is paying off. Still, no one celebrates yet. Nissan's culture values patience. A prototype that feels good one day can fail the next under different conditions. Even in the final months, Takagi walks the line between confidence and caution. He knows the expectations behind this car. When the first production spec 300ZX rolls off the line, the room goes quiet. Engineers walk around it slowly, checking seams, touching edges, lifting and lowering the headlights. There's pride here, but also realism. They built the car they believed the world needed, but they still don't know if the world will agree. And then comes the final moment, shipping the first units to America. It's a scene that doesn't carry drama, just quiet importance. Rows of cars lined up near the port, sunlight reflecting across their new, angular bodies. Workers preparing them for the long trip across the Pacific. The 300ZX is ready. Ready to face a market in transition. Ready to redefine the Z lineage. Ready to show America what performance looks like in a new era. The 300ZX may be remembered for its shape, its presence, and its timing, but its real story lives underneath the metal. The Z31 platform represents one of Nissan's most methodical engineering steps, a shift from tradition to precision. Every component is placed with intention. Every system is built to reflect what a 1980s sports car needs to survive. The chassis is the foundation. Nissan stretches the wheelbase slightly, widens the stance, and strengthens the subframe to handle both weight and turbo power. The result isn't stiffness for the sake of stiffness, it's stability. The car feels planted at highway speeds in a way earlier Z cars struggle with. This isn't about brute force, it's about balance, geometry, and how the car communicates through its tires. Suspension upgrades follow the same philosophy. McPherson struts up front, semi-trailing arms in the rear, and revised spring rates create a more predictable character. When the 300ZX turns, it doesn't snap or sway, it leans into the motion with confidence. Engineers focus on road feel, the kind of feedback that tells the driver exactly what the front wheels are doing without overwhelming them. And then there's the T-top. The removable roof panels aren't just a styling choice, they're part of the era. They offer airflow without compromising structure. Nissan reinforces the chassis so the car maintains rigidity even with the panels removed. It's a small detail, but it shows how much thought goes into making the Z feel modern without losing driver enjoyment. But the heart of this deep dive is the engine, the VG30 series. The naturally aspirated VG30E produces smooth, linear power. Around 160 horsepower in early models, it's built to be dependable, efficient, and forgiving. Multi-port fuel injection delivers cleaner combustion, better throttle response, and improved cold starts. Then comes the VG30ET, the turbocharged version. The turbo doesn't rely on drama. It doesn't kick violently or demand constant correction. Instead, Nissan gives it a controlled boost range with modest lag, allowing the power to build predictably. The engine creates a wide plateau of torque, making the 300ZX Turbo feel strong in real-world driving, not just on paper. Cooling improvements, upgraded radiators, oil coolers, and better airflow ducting address early prototype weaknesses. Engineers test the car in hot climates, high altitudes, and long highway pulls to ensure durability. Then we move into electronics, one of the car's defining features. Nissan incorporates early onboard diagnostics, a digital dashboard option, and electronic climate controls. For 1984, this is significant. Drivers are introduced to illuminated graphics, animated gauges, and a voice warning system that calmly speaks when a door is open or fuel is low. Some reviewers call it futuristic, others call it gimmicky, but it works. It shows where the world is heading, toward integration between machine and microprocessor. What begins with simple warnings will evolve into full digital intelligence in later decades. Aerodynamics play the next major role. The Z31's wedge shape is more than visual identity. It cuts drag, reduces lift, and improves fuel efficiency. Nissan focuses on the nose profile, lower, cleaner, sharper. Headlight buckets are shaped to deflect airflow smoothly. Side mirrors are redesigned. The rear is tapered to stabilize high-speed behavior. Wind tunnel testing proves the decision's right. The improved drag coefficient not only helps efficiency, but enhances confidence on open highways, especially at higher speeds. Another important detail: weight distribution. The move to a V6 allows engineers to position mass differently, slightly further back, improving handling balance. It may not transform the Z into a razor-sharp track weapon, but it delivers a predictable, steady personality that drivers appreciate. Inside, the seating position is lowered, the dashboard height refined, and visibility angles adjusted. The cockpit is meant to feel like a place you can spend hours in, not a tight performance shell. Despite the digital upgrades, physical controls remain simple and intuitive. Trim levels offer different personalities. The base model provides a clean, straightforward experience. The Turbo adds muscle. The 2+2 offers practicality for families or long-distance travel. And the rare Rewrote Special, introduced later, pushes the Z's performance identity further with firmer suspension and unique exterior touches. None of these versions feel like separate cars. They feel like variations of a single, unified design philosophy. Everything about the 300ZX's technical foundation reflects Nissan's approach to the era. Don't overpower the driver, empower them. Give them stability, give them information, give them technology that feels natural. The Z31 isn't trying to be the fastest car on the road. It's trying to be the most complete. And beneath its sharp lines and digital glow, that completeness becomes the cornerstone of its identity, the reason it earns respect far beyond its numbers. When the 300ZX finally reaches American roads, something unexpected happens. Drivers don't react with confusion or hesitation. They react with curiosity. The car doesn't look like anything Detroit is making in the early 1980s. It's angular without being harsh, modern without being strange, and confident without being loud. It feels like a glimpse into a different automotive future, and people notice. Mid-80s America is full of contrasts. MTV is changing the way young people think about style. Neon lights fill shopping centers. Arcade machines hum in the corners of diners. There's a playful, energized mood across the culture, and the 300ZX fits into it effortlessly. Its digital dashboard mirrors the era's fascination with computers. Car magazines pick it up quickly. Road tests describe the 300ZX as smart, refined, and forward-thinking. Some reviewers say it lacks the raw personality of older Z cars, but most agree, this is a new kind of performance, one built on logic rather than loudness. And as the 300ZX becomes more visible, something else takes shape, a new kind of enthusiast. Younger buyers who never grew up with big block V8s find themselves drawn to the Z. They appreciate the stability, the turbocharging, the digital tech, and the balance between speed and everyday drivability. They see a car that feels like the new decade rather than a throwback to the old one. Z-car clubs across the country feel the shift. Owners meet in parking lots, comparing dash lights, T-tops, and aftermarket wheels. Some bring their parents who remember the 240Z. Others bring friends who have only known compact imports. It becomes a bridging point, a Japanese car that fits comfortably into America's evolving performance culture. Motorsports pushes the car even further into the spotlight. Paul Newman becomes one of the most influential ambassadors for the 300ZX. His involvement in IMSA racing doesn't just add credibility, it changes perception. When Americans see a 300ZX winning races with Newman behind the wheel, the car becomes more than stylish transportation. It becomes a legitimate performance contender. IMSA victories build an identity around the Z31 that road tests alone couldn't achieve. Fans watch the car carve through corners with precision, hold steady at high speed, and deliver consistent results. The Z's reputation grows. By the mid-80s, you can see a shift across American roads. Imports are no longer just economical choices, they're becoming aspirational. A 300ZX parked at a shopping mall draws eyes. A turbo model on the highway turns heads. People point. People ask questions. Contrast that with the domestic landscape. American manufacturers are rebuilding identity, discovering fuel injection, revisiting performance tuning, and balancing new emissions rules. Yet many of their cars feel heavier, softer, or more cautious. The 300ZX stands in that gap and offers something young Americans want: a sports car that's fast, futuristic, reliable, and not impossibly expensive. It becomes a symbol in magazines, posters, and even advertising photography. Bright colors, palm tree backdrops, angled headlights reflecting afternoon sunlight. The Z31 becomes part of the 1980s visual language. And then there's tuning culture. The turbocharged models attract early import tuners. They experiment with boost controllers, intercooler upgrades, and exhaust systems. The Z31 becomes one of the first Japanese cars in America to inspire a generation of shade tree mechanics and young performance enthusiasts. It teaches them how power and reliability can coexist. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, the used car market transforms the 300ZX into something else entirely: a dream within reach. Young buyers who couldn't afford a new sports car now find themselves hunting for well-priced Z31s in classified ads and local lots. The car gains a second life, one built on accessibility and personality. What makes this phase important is how natural it feels. The 300ZX doesn't force itself into American culture. It grows into it. It becomes part of everyday life, from cross-country trips to late-night meets, from weekend tuning sessions to photo shoots in mall parking lots. It also quietly changes how Americans think about performance cars. Instead of asking, "Is it powerful?" many drivers begin asking, "How does it feel to drive? Is it balanced? Is it usable every day?" These are questions the 300ZX answers effortlessly. As its presence expands, it reshapes expectations, not by shouting, not by dominating, but by proving that precision, technology, and stability can deliver the kind of joy American drivers thought they lost in the 1970s. The Z31 becomes not just a car, but a marker of transition, a symbol of where performance is heading, a bridge between the raw past and the refined future. And as the 1980s continue, the impact only grows. As the 1990s arrive, the automotive world changes again. Technology advances quickly, performance rises, expectations shift. And yet, the 300ZX doesn't fade the moment the new decade begins. Instead, its legacy becomes clearer. The Z31 turns out to be the bridge that makes the next evolution possible. The transition to the Z32 shows this immediately. When the fourth-generation 300ZX launches in 1989, it carries a sharper identity, more advanced engineering, and a bold, sculpted design. But beneath all that progress is the foundation built by the Z31. The earlier car proves that a modern Z can be electronic, aerodynamic, and technologically forward. It shows that enthusiasts can accept change, that a V6 can replace an inline-six, that the Z lineage can grow without losing its meaning. And because of that, the Z32 arrives with confidence. Collectors today recognize the Z31's importance. Values begin to rise, especially for clean turbo models. Cars once dismissed as used imports are now treated with care, preserved, restored, and documented. The 2+2 models find their own niche. Families who grew up with them begin hunting for the same configuration again. The car becomes a memory people want to hold, a shape that brings back road trips, highway hum, and summer drives with T-tops removed. Across online forums and Z-Club gatherings, long-term owners share stories. Stories about engines lasting 300,000 miles. Stories about fathers handing down their Z to their sons or daughters. Stories about small towns where a single 300ZX becomes a local icon. These personal histories keep the car alive long after production ends. Restorers appreciate the car for different reasons. The Z31 is simple enough to work on without modern complexity, but advanced enough to feel like a real progression into the computer age. Electronics can be repaired. Turbo systems can be upgraded. Interiors can be refreshed without losing originality. And then there's the styling. A design that once looked futuristic now represents a specific and beloved era. The wedge shape, the pop-up headlights, the straight body lines, the digital dash glow at night. It's more than nostalgia. It's a time capsule of how the 1980s imagined the future. In modern car culture, the Z31 sits in a unique space. It's not the loudest icon. It's not the fastest. It's not the rarest. But it is one of the most meaningful transitions in Nissan's entire history. You see this reflected in its international following. In the US, it's a symbol of the import wave's early years. In Japan, it represents an era of ambition and rising global influence. In Europe, it stands as an affordable alternative to pricier sports cars of the time. Every region finds its own meaning in the 300ZX. Modern relevance also grows through media. Retro car channels, online documentaries, and social communities highlight the Z31's role in shaping the sports cars that follow. Younger audiences discover it not as an old car, but as a piece of the timeline that connects analog and digital performance. And as EVs begin to redefine mobility, the 300ZX gains a new kind of value, emotional value. It becomes a reminder of mechanical honesty, a reminder of the era when engineering was tactile, when drivers felt the road through the wheel instead of through sensors. A reminder of how change doesn't erase identity, it reshapes it. That's the Z31's lasting message. Its legacy isn't about numbers or records or dominance. It's about evolution. It's about helping the Z name survive a new decade. It's about showing that advancement and identity can coexist. And today, when a clean 300ZX rolls past on a sunny afternoon, people still turn their heads. Not because it's rare, but because it represents a moment in automotive history when the future began to take shape. When you look back at the story of the 300ZX, it becomes clear that its impact isn't built on a single moment. It isn't a car defined by one headline or one race or one trend. It grows slowly, the same way culture changes, the same way people adapt, the same way ideas take root. The question we asked in the beginning still stands. How did a Japanese sports car earn a place in America at a time when the country was uncertain about what performance meant? The answer reveals itself piece by piece. It arrives on quiet highways. It arrives in engineering rooms where decisions reshape a legacy. It arrives in the hands of owners who keep the car running long after its era ends. The 300ZX doesn't fight its way into the American story. It slides into it naturally, by offering balance when the market was confused, by offering technology when people were curious, and by offering reliability when drivers needed consistency. Its legacy becomes clearer over time, a bridge between analog emotions and digital promise, a lesson in how evolution can honor tradition, a reminder that performance isn't just noise or power, it's connection. The Z31 carries that message quietly, without demanding attention. And today, when a clean 300ZX rolls across a sunny stretch of highway, the moment feels familiar. The wedge-shaped lines catch the light. The pop-up headlights hint at a different era. The car moves with that same quiet confidence it had the day it arrived in the 1980s. It still represents transition. It still represents possibility. It still represents the moment when the future of performance took a new direction. The Z31 doesn't rewrite history with force. It rewrites it with intention. And that's why it lasts. Not because it's loud, not because it's dominant, but because it shows how progress is built. Quietly, steadily, and with a purpose that only becomes clear when you look back and realize how much the road has changed.